Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of the Mainstream Indie Music channel. Kings of Leon, huge band, probably one of the most mainstream bands that we're going to cover on this channel. But it was recommended to me by a very gracious listener who kept bothering me, and I say that in a very kind and loving way, to cover Kings of Leon. And honestly, they were on the radar. I don't quite know where they fit, if they fit at all in the indie genre. Maybe you could make a case for the beginning two albums that the Kings of Leon released. But definitely once they hit the mainstream with their huge hits around 2000, the end of the 2000s, they definitely got catapulted into the mainstream channels. However, what we're really going to focus on this week, too, is the Kings of Leon's response to being thrust into the mainstream. Not too much backstory I'm going to spend on. I'm going to kind of switch that up, too, on the channel so far. I think sometimes I kind of get caught in just like the band's overall timeline versus trying to just tell a fascinating story of a band or of a song. So I want to kind of change the approach. Nothing too major. But pretty much to at least set the scene, the Kings of Leon were started by the Followill brothers and one cousin. So you got three brothers and a cousin, all related there. The cousin was the youngest of the bunch as well. It's funny because they describe in many interviews as kidnapping him essentially and bringing him in to record what essentially became their debut album, even with him not really knowing how to play any kind of instruments. So they had to really kind of fake it until they made it. But it was a success. They got a lot of help from a songwriter and producer as well that kind of helped them gain that access to kind of famous producers. And their second album sold very well as well. However, let me say this. Their first two albums, the Kings of Leon's first two albums, did not do very well here in America. They were very well loved over in England and in Ireland and basically anywhere overseas. They were really just enamored by the sound that they had. I don't know why. Maybe in the United States, around the time that they were starting to make music was the early to mid 2000s. And at that point, that was kind of like the modern day indie renaissance period. So maybe it was just kind of lack of space. They just had too much competition. But for whatever reason, their first two albums did not do very well, at least here in the United States. Because of the Times was their third album, which started to find them on some uneven ground. Ironically, right before their fourth album being their biggest one yet. But what started to happen was a lot of the fans were wondering where the Kings of Leon were starting to go because their third album started a little bit shift in sound. A lot of diehard fans of Kings of Leon became worried about which direction the band was going, which led to the infamous fourth album. Of course, the fourth album featured such hits like Sex on Fire, Use Somebody, and Notion, and I really feel like this splits Kings of Leon fans right down the middle, even to this day. I was there when this album became big. I was listening to Kings of Leon even before their fourth album. And I mean, I'm in the crowd that agrees that their sound definitely changed on that fourth album, even going forward into their music that they were making today. And the success got to the band members. Caleb, in particular, the lead singer, had an extremely hard time with the success that they were going through. He stated that it was crazy before the fourth album was released that they were going overseas, over to England and to Ireland, and being swarmed and mobbed by fans all over, being publicly recognized on the streets. And the moment they would, take a plane and land back in America, they could be picked up by their own mother in the airport and no one would bat an eye. No one knew who they were, even in their own hometown. So it was a little bit of an identity crisis, to kind of just go from screaming fans to that would just be a huge jump. And on their fourth album, it happened on an even bigger scale, where a lot of the original fans, the ones that had stuck for them from day one, were a little confused by the fourth album. Like I said, it definitely was a tonal shift from the first three albums. It was a lot more polished, and you could tell it was built a lot more for the mainstream. And in so doing that, they really hurt the feelings of a lot of longtime fans. That led to their fifth album that they released afterwards. Come Around Sundown is their fifth album, and this was pretty much when the wheels fell off of the wagon of Kings of Leon. It started off good. It started off very solid because, again, they were building off of the momentum of their fourth album. However, maybe because fans just kind of moved on from the Kings of Leon, started to focus on other things, or because the music genre started to shift around the 2010s to more electro pop music, the mainstream fans for Kings of Leon kind of left. Caleb, one time, I forget where this is. It's an interview. You can find it on YouTube, but it was crazy the way he described it, where he said they would literally play shows where they would see fans just stay to listen to one of their hits like Use Somebody or Sex on Fire. And he said the moment they would play those songs, he would see a mass exodus toward the exits. This got so bad. Their struggle with mainstream success got so bad that near the end of that tour for their fifth album, Caleb, at a show, disappeared backstage, promising that he would come back. Now, during the show, he was intoxicated. He was slurring words, mumbling nonsense the entire show, and he never came back on stage. So the band members literally had to apologize and leave. And at that moment, he says that the four of them, family, didn't even know if they were going to keep going on as a group. They went on a hiatus, not even for very long, less than a year, before returning to record for their sixth album. That hiatus, however, saved the band. To this day, they have released 9 studio albums, with one of them being released in 2024. They nowadays have pretty much just found their audience. They only perform for them and are not very worried about what the future holds. What do you guys think of Kings of Leon? Let me know in the comments. See you next